Hey guys, what is up? And I know it's been a while since my last video, and I'm sorry, but I'm back, and I've actually got many more videos coming. But in today's video, I want to take a look back at the OnePlus 7 Pro after having owned it for over a year. And I want to cover the different aspects of the phone just to see how it performs over a year later, and ultimately try to answer the question, is it still worth buying? And I'm going to say this right now, I really do like this phone, so you can probably guess my answer to that question, especially when you see prices for new phones rising everywhere you look. But let's just not waste any more time and get straight into the video. So right off the bat, the phone has held up really well. It still looks and feels fantastic, just as it did on day one with that premium glass and metal design. I'm super happy I opted to go with the Nebula Blue color option. It's a really eye-catching color, and it sort of shifts under lighting depending on its angle. Occasionally I'll use the phone without a case, and when I do, it does pick up some fingerprints. Overall though, I've taken pretty good care of it. It's had a couple of drops in the past, and it's been in places where it could definitely get scratched up, but besides some very small scratches around the frame of the phone, it still looks and functions like new, and that includes the pop-up camera on the front, which I know was something that a lot of people were concerned about, so I'm happy to report zero issues there. Now this is a big phone, and I'm not saying that as a bad thing necessarily because it comes as a result of that huge display, but it's really something you should consider. That display is probably my favorite thing about this phone. It's a notchless Quad HD Plus 90Hz AMOLED display. That's basically all you need to know. It was a great display in 2019, and of course, it's still great in 2020. 90Hz makes animation super fluid and honestly just makes the phone feel quite a bit faster. And sure, a lot of times you won't even see it if you're watching a video at like 24 or 30 frames per second or when you're playing most games, but it is really nice to have. Not having a notch or cutout or anything like that is also a factor that stopped me from upgrading to the OnePlus 8 Pro. When you're watching videos and photos, they fill the screen and they just look great, and it feels almost like you're holding the content itself. Also, I haven't had to worry about how different apps address the notch or even a hole punch, so the experience has always been more consistent across the board. I'm not a huge fan of the curved edges though. They're not a huge deal to me, but if I was given the option, I would pass. They just don't add much value, and they make it harder to use without a case since you're basically holding the edges of the screen. In terms of battery life, things have actually been really good for me, and I'm sure that's partially because I've gone with 1080p for the display instead of 1440p, so that's definitely going to help a little bit with that. But if I had to guess screen on time, I'd say on average I get around 6 hours or so of screen on time, but that's definitely going to fluctuate a lot depending on how you use your phone, so don't take that too seriously. But overall, I've had no problems in getting through a full day of normal use, and I'm happy with the battery life. OnePlus's Warp Charge is also insanely fast, so even if I do start to get low, all I have to do is plug it in for like 20 minutes, and I'm good to go for the rest of the day, so battery life has really never been a concern. So while not at the level of like the latest iPhones, for example, the main camera can absolutely capture some great images. And if you're just wanting to capture moments, then this will definitely do it. And it's going to do it well with nice dynamic range and detail in most scenes. The biggest weak point I found with the camera here is actually the telephoto and wide-angle cameras. Personally, I find images from them just have noticeably more noise and less detail than those from the main camera, although I still like having them for instances where I really need that specific focal length. Overall, video quality is good. It's got good detail, but it's often oversaturated. But you do have a lot of flexibility when it comes to different modes like 4K 60 frames per second, as well as Super Steady mode that uses the wide-angle camera, along with support for regular video recording through the wide-angle camera, which was actually added in a software update. I've actually become a big fan of the pop-up camera since I've never really had a big issue with it in day-to-day use, and it's really what enables that fully notchless or hole punchless display. Now, of course, I probably use my phone differently than some people out there, so maybe that second delay from opening might be an issue for you, but personally, I don't use it enough for it to be a problem. The performance here was absolutely fantastic when it came out, and it still is today, months after I received the update to Android 10, and I would totally expect this phone to be fast years from now. Everything is super snappy and super fluid with nicely done animations that really benefit from that high refresh rate. Overall, I really like Oxygen OS. It's not overly packed with features, but it has some features that can be really useful, like DC dimming, which basically reduces flickering in the display. or parallel apps, which allows you to basically run 2 versions of the same app, along with lots of customization options. Gesture navigation has also been executed very well, and it's very fluid to use, so I've never even really considered going back to the navigation bar. I've also been getting very consistent updates since I got it, including a number of updates that have helped to improve the camera's performance, which is nice to see, especially in night mode. Now, one very obvious annoyance that I've found is the auto brightness. And although it usually works, way too often it will set the brightness too dark and I'll have to manually adjust it, so a lot of times I just have it disabled. I want to mention a few other things done well, starting with the fingerprint sensor, which is quick and it's mostly reliable. The dual speakers mean you don't have to worry about accidentally covering your speaker up, and they just sound great with nice depth and volume. The haptic motor is fantastic, and it might not seem that important, but trust me, it makes a huge difference. As opposed to the old vibration motors on the old OnePlus phones, this gives much cleaner feedback that's closer to an actual physical click as opposed to just a rough vibration, and it just makes the overall experience a lot more refined. It's not perfect though. I would like to have the option for expandable storage, but then again, 256 gigabytes of UFS 3.0 storage here is plenty for me, and it's super fast, so it's not like a huge deal. You also don't have wireless charging or any official IP rating here, and lastly, there's no support for 5G, which to me doesn't bother me that much. Most of these features have been added to the OnePlus 8 Pro, so the 8 Pro is definitely more of a true flagship. And overall, it is the better phone, but it's also quite a bit more expensive, and at least for me, the addition of those extra features is not enough to drastically improve the experience to make it worth paying that price premium. You could even make the argument that the screen is a downgrade in a way with the removal of the pop-up camera for a hole punch, since you no longer have that uninterrupted full display. Overall, this phone has held up remarkably well, and it's actually improved from updates in some areas like the camera. And when it came out, it had a lot of features like that high refresh rate, for example, that enabled an overall fantastic Android experience. And as new phones came out and adopted those features, it now feels like this phone could have easily come out in 2020. So for that reason, I think it's a very good option to buy used. Also, if you're someone who really wants that uninterrupted edge-to-edge display, then it's actually a lot more enticing because there's just not that many options like this without some kind of notch or hole punch. If you can't find a good deal, then the value here is very hard to beat, and it should perform really well for a very long time thanks to that combination of impressive specs and clean software. So that's about it for this video. Make sure to drop a like down below if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see future content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.